What's up? Joey here at School of Motion, and welcome to day 26 of 30 Days of After Effects. Today we have a pretty cool video. We're gonna talk about text animators in After Effects. Text animators are this feature of After Effects that was added and it came with all these presets. It's amazingly powerful and really useful, but the problem is it's kind of confusing and things really aren't labeled in a way that makes it easy to use. So I'm gonna help you figure out how it all works, and I'm gonna show you some easy techniques to start building your own library of text animations and give you some insight as to why it's important for you to learn this feature of After Effects. So let's hop into After Effects and get started.
So let's talk about text animators. Now, most people that I've actually seen use the text animators in After Effects just sort of use the built-in presets that come with After Effects because there's really not a ton of great resources out there I found to learn how to use these things. And it's also sometimes it's just easier to just manually animate type and make it do exactly what you want. But when you're doing a project that has a ton of type in it, and it's one of those jobs that, I mentioned from time to time, not everything is going to go on your reel. Not everything is going to be the most amazing thing you've ever created. And sometimes you just got to get stuff done. And text animators can let you do fairly sophisticated type animation, but in a way where it's super easy to change it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just dive right in. And I'll show you how I made all these little animations here. So let's make a new comp, and we'll call this one bounce. I'm just going to add a type layer in there. We'll just type in the word bounce, and we'll get started. So the way text animators work, it's actually, in a weird way, it's similar to the way MoGraph works inside of Cinema 4D. So if you're familiar with that, then this may make a little bit more sense to you. But if not, don't worry. I'm going to try and break this down and make it a little bit easier to understand. So the way you add a text animator is you have a text layer, right? And you open up the text options right there. And you can see over here, there's a little button that says animate with a little arrow. And if you click that arrow, you get all these neat things you can animate. So to make this bouncy animation, let me open up the original one I made here. Here's the bouncy animation. All right. So here's how I made this. Let me close all these too so I don't confuse myself. Here we go. All right. So one way you can use these text animators is to basically create positions and sort of states for your type and then animate between them to create, bouncy animation or, have things scale up and scale down or rotate into position or stuff like that. So what I do sometimes when I use these is I'll create, I'll click on this button, and I want these letters to sort of fly up from the bottom and sort of overshoot and come back and bounce and land. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be animating the position. So when you say animate position, here's what happens. This animator 1 gets added. So the first thing I'm gonna do is rename that so it's something that means a little bit more. So this is actually gonna be the initial position. And the way this works is you've got two parts to this text animator. You've got the actual property that's being changed, which is the position. And you'll see if I move this, it's going to move every single letter, okay? And then you've also got the range selector. And this is the key to text animators, okay? When I change this position like this, okay, if I move it to the bottom, now I've got this range selector, and right now the range is set from 0 to 100, meaning the entire string of letters is being affected. But you can animate this, right? If I animate the end, then it's going to sort of one at a time have each of these letters be influenced, right? And so that's sort of the simplest version of using a text animator. You can just set a keyframe here, come over here, set another keyframe, and ram preview it, and there's your type animation, right? And the thing is that the default settings for these are pretty ugly. Every letter goes one at a time. There's no overlap to them. There's no easing, and it just doesn't really feel good. And it's a lot of steps, like to try and make this feel good. This is, I think, the trouble with text animators, and the reason they aren't more widely used is that they're just not that user friendly right now. And maybe in a future version of After Effects that'll be changed, but it's just not that intuitive. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to I'm going to stack a few of these text animators. I'm not just going to use one and try to get it to do everything. I'm going to use multiple text animators. So what I did was I used one text animator, which is actually not animated at all. All it's doing is it's setting the initial position of my type down here. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this, right? So you just click on it, Command D duplicates it, and now I'm going to say position 01. All right, so now position 01 is actually going to be negative 663, okay? And actually it's going to be even a little bit less than that, because what I want to happen is I want the type to overshoot and then come back down. So this is going to be the first position this type sort of ends up in, okay? And now, if I use this range selector and I animate from 0 to 100, right, you can see that now, because the type is starting down here, and the purpose of this text animator is to move it back up, when I animate the end, right, from left to right, the letters kind of fly back into the screen. So that's great. Another thing you can do is you can leave this at 100%, and you can animate the offset. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do, and you just got to be careful, because if you go too far, it'll start to come back around. Okay, so let's put some keyframes on here. We're going to start negative 100. We'll go forward to 1 second, and we'll set this to 0. All right, now let's play this. All right, so we've got the letters doing what we want them to do. That's the first move, but what I really don't like is that it's like one letter at a time, and there's no overlap, which sucks, frankly. And then there's no easing either. They just kind of stick. They're flying in and they just stick, and it's just really just doesn't feel good. So this is where some of these advanced range selector settings can come in. So there's two settings you got to mess with. One is, and there's actually a lot of settings you can mess with, but text animators are actually a pretty deep topic, and we're not going to be able to get to everything in this video, but I just want you to get kind of the basics out of the way. So if you look at the shape, okay, the shape right now is defined as a square, and what that shape is referring to is it's sort of the shape of the influence of the range selector as you change this offset amount, right? And it's square right now, meaning that it goes from one letter and then to the next letter and then to the next letter. But you can change this shape, and there's a whole bunch of different ones, right? And there's ramp up and ramp down, and so let's just kind of go through them a little bit. So ramp up, right? You can see that it's sort of making things go backwards. So that's not what we want. So let's go down to ramp down. And now as we move through, you can see now the letters are overlapping a little bit. It's not the B and then the O and then the U. They're all sort of happening together, right? There's some overlap, which is great. And because we've changed it to ramp down, now the animation isn't finishing. So we need the offset to actually go all the way to 100. So let's set that to 100. Cool. So that's better, but there's still no easing. It's still really stiff, right? But at least there's some overlap. So now the next thing we can do is we can actually add easing. So there's two settings here. There's ease high and ease low. And it's really weird that they're called ease high and ease low. Like, why aren't they called ease in and ease out? But watch what happens if I crank up the ease high to 100. Boom. Now they ease in. Beautiful. And actually, this is what I want. What basically ease high is ease in, and ease low is ease out, meaning the initial position here, there's no easing happening there. If I crank this up, then there will be. And they'll ease out of this position and then ease into this position. But I don't want that. I just want them to, let me set this back to 0. I want them to shoot out of the initial position, and then I want them to ease into the final position. So ease high is making them ease into that. All right, so now, there you go. We've got the first part of our move. Fantastic. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just duplicate this and call this position 2. And you can see I've, our type is being messed up now. So what I'm going to do is first reset this position. Set that to 0, okay? Because this position is a relative position. It's not an absolute position. So I want it to move down relative to its current position. So I'm just going to decrease the Y position a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to go into the range selector, And I'm going to take these keyframes and I'm just going to knock them over like 2 frames because I want this move to happen slightly after this move, right? And so what that's going to do is it's going to let the letters come down. You can see it's happening very slightly right now. So let's amp this up a little bit more so you can see the effect better. All right, and let me scoot these keyframes over even a little bit further. There we go. And now you can see that the letters come up and then they kind of come down a little bit, so they're overshooting. Pretty cool. And now I want to go into the advanced properties here, and I want them to ease out of their, when they overshoot, I want them to ease out, and then when they land, I want them to ease in. So I want both of these eases to be set to 100%. Okay? And you can see that now that's created some problems. And so what's happening is if you have both the ease high and the ease low set to 100%, then sometimes the easing can sort of get funky. So I'm going to set both of them to 50. And now we get a nice little settling. Cool. And so, the more delay I have between this set of keyframes and this set of keyframes, the longer it sort of hangs up there, right? And if I have them closer together, it's like a much quicker little transition. Okay, so you can sort of play with the timing between it. And that's the basics of how you can stack type effectors or text effectors to get this, right? And so then let's say you wanted it to just overshoot down the other way a little bit. Well, you could just duplicate this, right? And then come to the position and just make this like a negative 45 or something. So now it's going back the other way, and then you offset these keyframes, right? And now, and you can see we got to kind of play with the timing a little bit. May have to kick these out a little bit more. All right, so now it goes too far and it comes back down and it shoots up a little bit. And what I found is that if you start going too crazy with these, if you start stacking a whole bunch of them, you can see that the timing can start to create it can sort of minimize the animation that you're trying to create. So you may have to push these keyframes a little bit further apart to really see everything. There we go. Bounce. And then I can just grab all these keyframes and move them closer together, right? And there's your bounce. All right? And so just by playing with the timing, you can really get the exact result you want. Cool. All right, and then the beauty of this, right? You've done all this work and it's a little weird, but once you get it working the way you want, then you can just type in, if you have like some weird long last name, it doesn't matter. Like you can type in absolutely anything and you can get this cool result. And you can type in entire sentences, and then, if this is a longer word, so I want it to take a little bit longer. Okay, just move the keyframes a little bit. So this is the beauty of taking the time to set up something like this, is now if you have you're doing like a corporate piece and you have 100 titles, you don't have to, and this is what you want it to look like. You don't have to like split this into layers and do some kind of crazy pre-comp and animate each one. It's like you just copy and paste this type layer, type something else in. All right, so let's look at some other stuff you can do with type layers. So that's the bounce. Let's look at this one. This was kind of an interesting one, this glitch, right? Glitches are very hot right now. Glitches are so hot. Actually, Red Giant just came out with a new glitch plugin as part of their universe package, which is really awesome, and it does this stuff very easily for you. So check that out if you're into glitches. So let's talk about how I did this. So let's first make our type layer. Right, let's call it glitch. And so this, I started by just doing, I started this kind of in the same way. So when you make a type layer, the anchor point of each letter is at the bottom by default. And so if I wanted to like scale up some of these letters, but have them scale from the middle, I need to change the anchor point of the letter. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to animate the anchor point, and I'm just going to rename animator1 to anchor point fix. And I'm just going to move the anchor point so that it's in the middle. And then I can just move my type layer up like this, so it's in the middle. And there we go. And so now every text animator I put after this is going to use that new anchor point. So again, you can stack these things to get the result you want. So now the next thing I want to do is animate the scale of some of these letters. And so if one thing that's pretty cool about the text animators is that it works on a per character basis. So if I hit scale, it's going to scale up each letter, which gives you this interesting result that it's actually wouldn't be that easy to do any other way. But what if I only want some letters big and I want it to be kind of random, right? There's, the default range selector is not going to give you that control. It's only going to let you do things kind of sequentially, right? So what you can do though is you can add a different type of range selector called. And so if you click add, once you've added something that you can animate, right, you can click on these individual text animator groups and there's a little arrow to the right of them and you can add more stuff to them. So if I want to add another property, I can do that. I can also add a different selector. And remember, the selector is the key to the text animator. You set the property that you want to be changed, but then what you're animating is the selection of letters, or you can even have it be a selection of words. You can change that too. There's a setting down here that you can base this on characters or words or lines. There's a lot of settings here. But you're animating the selector. And so if I grab a wiggly selector, this is sort of a random selector, and you can see right away it's sort of randomizing what's going on here, and it's animated by default, right? And so it kind of creates this funny, silly, rubbery looking thing, which is kind of interesting. And what's interesting is you've got two selectors on here now, a range selector and a wiggly selector, and they can work together in different ways, right? So right now the range selector, this is how you should think about it. The range selector, the start is 0, the end is 100. That means the entire friggin' thing is selected, okay? And there's 0 offset. If I move the offset this way, you can actually see the beginning and the end. It shows you these two lines. It shows you what's selected, okay? So that's what's being selected. Now in the wiggly selector, the mode right now is set to intersection, okay? What that means is it's only going to affect things that are already selected. So if I set this range selector, to have an offset of 60, or it'd make this even easier, let's say 0 to 50%. So only the first half of the word is selected. The next selector, the mode is set to intersect. This selector will only affect the first 50% of the word. Now, if you set this to add, right, then what it's going to do is it's going to add a wiggly selection to this that's already selected, and the stuff that's not selected is just going to get a normal selection. So that's why you can see these letters look bigger than these letters. So you can actually sort of use, transfer modes, I guess, with these selectors. So this is cool because what you can do, first thing I want to do is I want to turn the wiggles per second to 0. I don't want these animated, okay? What I do want is I want to lock the dimensions. So if I say on, now when it scales these things up, it's only going to scale them up the same on X and Y. So you won't get these weird stretched out letters unless you want that. There you go. And so then what you can do is you can animate, you can say how big do you want these things to get, right? So I want, I want them to get pretty big. And so the way this is working, right? I've set the scale to 200 and let's just set it to 250. The scale is set to 250. The wiggly selector is sort of creating random selection values. And the way that text animators work is if a letter is 100% selected, it will be assigned a scale of 250. If it's 50% selected, it will be assigned a value less than 250, right? It would be assigned 125. And because the wiggly selector has a max amount of 100% and a minimum amount of negative 100%, what that means is that you could actually end up with a letter that has a negative selected value. It's negative 50% selected, which means that it can actually have a negative scale. So if you don't want that, you set the minimum amount to 0. So that way, either the letters are their normal size or they're bigger than that. Okay, so now I'm going to set that to negative 100 because I think it would be cool if some of these letters became smaller. All right, so I'm gonna set the range selector to 100%. So every one of these is selected, okay? And what I want to do is I want to have sort of the letters randomly sort of twitch. So the way I did that was I just changed the random seed, right? If you just change this number, it's going to give you different results. And what's interesting is it actually kind of does it in a way that's kind of correlated, I guess. So like as I animate this random seed, the values change smoothly. So what I want to do is I'm going to just pick, okay, I think that looks that's cool right there. So I'm going to put a keyframe there, and I'm going to set that to be a hold keyframe. So Command Option, click the keyframe, go to the next frame, and then just change this and change it to something that looks different, right? Then go to the next keyframe, change it to something that looks totally different, right? And then I'm going to go forward 2 keyframes, change it to something else, and there you go. And so then the next thing I want to keyframe, I want it to basically twitch a few times like this, and then I want them to sort of settle. So now what I can do is I can actually animate this, right? I can animate the initial range selector, and I could change the start to go all the way up to 100. And the effect of that is if the start is 100 and the end is 100, that means nothing is selected. And because the wiggly selector is set to intersect, it's not going to affect anything, right? So maybe on this frame here, I'll put a keyframe, then I'll go forward like 3 frames and set that to 100. I'll easy ease those. And let's just do a quick RAM preview, right? Cool. So now you've got this little twitchy, glitchy thing, right? And let me just nudge this forward a few frames so it starts on black. Cool. So that's kind of neat, but I kind of want a little bit more movement to this. I want a little bit more of an effect. So what I'm going to do is let me rename this. So this is the wiggly scale. And I want to do the same thing with the position of these letters too. So let me just duplicate wiggly scale for a minute. Let's say wiggly position. Okay, and let's open up this. And what I want to do is instead of having the scale be animated, so you can actually click on scale and just hit delete. And now that property doesn't get affected anymore. And then I can go over to this add button and say property, position, and I can adjust the Y. So now, in addition to the scale moving, we get the Y. Right? And I've got these things separated out, and that's kind of handy. I mean, what I could do is I could just go into wiggly scale like this and add the position property to this. So now you would have scale and position being affected. But I kind of like having them separated out because now I could really easily, if I wanted to have a little bit less of sort of an in sync animation, I could just move these keyframes over a little bit. And so now the position isn't so in sync with the scale, right? And you can play with that. You could have, you could have the position twitch even a little bit after the scale is done animating. So it's kind of nice to have everything separate out. So there you go. So now you have this cool little glitchy animation, right? And, I'm not really loving where that T is ending up, right? So what I could do, let's see. So that is happening because of this position keyframe here. So I'm just going to change the random seed on that keyframe. There we go. So now we'll get a different result. Cool. I kind of dig that. Right? So that's cool. That shows you how you can use the wiggly, little selector to get kind of random stuff. And now, of course, like you get the same benefits here. You can literally type in whatever you want, and you've got this cool glitchy kind of animation. And you don't have to do anything else. And you can make 100 of these in like a few minutes now. So again, I want to keep reinforcing this. These are very powerful, and you don't have to just think of them as, there's these canned type animations that ship with After Effects. And yes, they are cheesy. And yes, a lot of them really, they look like, like a bad video toaster preset or something, but you can make your own. So I'll show you, let me just kind of show you another one I did. This one here, this slide one. Right? This is similar to the bounce one I did, except, you know what? we're doing these, you guys understand that my videos can be long, so why don't I just do this? Let me stop talking about it and actually do it. This slide one, the way I did this one was, so first thing I did was I set the initial, anchor point. So I did the same thing. I set the anchor point. Now, before I do that, actually what I want to do is I want to enable per character 3D. So right now, this is a 2D type layer. You can actually animate each of the letters using the text animators as if they're 3D objects. So if you say enable per character 3D, you get this neat little icon in your 3D checkbox. And now any of your position, scale, rotation transforms you do are going to have X, Y, and Z. So what I want to do is I'm going to set my anchor point. First, I want the anchor point in the middle again. But then I want the anchor point actually back like 100 pixels in Z space. Now, it's not really gonna, and here, I'll make it really obvious. I'll make it 200 pixels. And this is just gonna be our initial setup, right? And so again, this isn't animated, it's just setting up what we're about to do next. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna animate the rotation. Okay, and actually I need to make sure I don't have this selected when I do that. So it'll give me a new text animator. So this is gonna be rotation. And what's cool is because I've moved the anchor point, if I rotate these now, you can see they actually rotate around the anchor point. So you can move them, you can get these kind of complex movements, right? So what I did was I had them start, back here somewhere, okay? So this is gonna be my initial, oopsie daisy. Let me open this back up. So I have my initial setup, and this is gonna be my initial rotation. And this doesn't need to be animated. And then I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to call this rotation 01. So this will be my first sort of move. And what I'm going to do is go back to my Y rotation and just make this plus 142.5. Oops, sorry. There we go. 142.5. There we go. And because remember, these are relative values. And so since we set the initial rotation to negative 142.5, to get it back here, I need it to go to 142.5. And then I can just use my range selector. And we'll animate the offset again. And first, let's go to the advanced tab. And remember, the default square shape isn't very nice. So we're going to use ramp down. And let's set the ease high. Let's just set that to 50 and set the ease low to 50 as a start. And now we animate the offset. So the offset's going to start at negative 100. Let's put a keyframe there. Go forward to 1 second. And 100. And we play that. And there you go. Now you've got kind of a nice little easing slide. Now at the beginning of this, you don't want to see these letters. You kind of, and so you can decide how you want them to appear. An easy thing to do is to just animate their opacity. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this right here, and I'm going to call this opacity. And let me open this up, and I need to delete this rotation stuff, because this text animator, I'm only going to be dealing with opacity. And the first thing I'm going to do is in the initial setup, I'm going to add a property of opacity. So now in addition to changing the anchor point, I'm going to set the opacity to 0. And now in the in this opacity effector here, what I'm going to do, I just called it an effector. That's how much this sort of works like Cinema 4D. I'm gonna add the property of opacity to this and set the opacity to 100%. And now for the range selector, all right, the range selector already has the animation on there. And so what's happening is it's moving through the letters one by one and fading them on as they rotate up. Pretty nifty, right? And so I didn't really have to do much more than that. If you want, let's say that you don't actually want the letters to start appearing until they're, here. You can just offset these keyframes a little bit, right? And so now they look like they're kind of sliding in, but there's kind of this interesting rotation to them. All right, now I kind of liked it better the way it was initially. All right, and so if we look at the one that I created, the only other thing I did was I also added some Z rotation, right? So I had them kind of lean in as they were as they're kind of animating on. But again, it's the same concept. We're just starting with an initial setup and just stacking these type animators. And then once you get some animation going, you can just offset the animated ones by a little bit. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is how I made this one, just because I want to just demonstrate, and this isn't going to be that useful for you unless you already know some expressions, but I want to show you just how powerful these things can be. It's pretty crazy, the power built into these text animators, and I think the more people that play around with them and sort of try to really crack them open and figure them out, the better all of us are going to be at understanding the power of them. You really can do a lot of stuff with them. So what I thought was, wouldn't it be cool if I could sort of have them alternate, some come from the top, some come from the bottom, and have them, sort of work like a slot machine or something. So the way, let's just sort of dive in and start talking about how to do that. So I'm going to animate the position. All right, now here's the tricky thing. I need every other letter to go in a different direction, right? So I can't just say, there's not really an obvious way to do it. Like using just a range selector, I could like do this, right? And then just make sure that only that first letter is selected, and then add another one and make sure only the second letter is selected. I could do that. That would be a huge pain. But I was sort of thinking about how to approach this, and I looked at the selectors, and I noticed there was an expression selector. Okay, so you click on this, and it adds another selector, expression selector, and if you click on this arrow by amount, there's an expression in here. All right, and so looking at these variables here, I'm thinking, okay, well, the selector value, that's probably, the amount of selection that's going to end up on each letter. And the text index, well, I'm guessing that's, like this is the first letter, so that has an index of 1. And this is the second letter, so that has an index of 2. And text total must be the total amount of numbers. So I figured out that there's these variables that you can work with. And so what you want to do, and what you can do, which is awesome, is you can make a little if-then expression using these variables. So you've got selector value and text index and text total. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to first write a little if-then, okay? So we're going to say if, and what we want to check, here's what we want to check. We want to see if, because these text animators, they're evaluating each letter on its own. So letter by letter, it's going to evaluate. And so we want to say, okay, well, if this is an odd numbered text index, right? So if this is the first letter or the third letter or the fifth letter, I want you to move that letter by whatever this position is. But if it's an even letter, if it's number 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever, I want you to do basically the opposite of what this position is set to. So I need to be able to check if each letter is an odd or an even, index. And there's an easy way to do that with a little programming trick, and I'll teach it to you guys. And I don't want to get too deep into the programming side of this, but here's the way it works. So if the text index, and remember this text index variable is going to be whatever letter is being looked at, right? And I'm going to use a % sign here and say 2. Okay, now what this is, okay, and let me put this whole thing in parentheses. So we've got if, open parentheses, and then another open parentheses, text index, %sign 2. Now, what the heck is that % sign? Well, that is actually it's an operator. It's called an operator. But what it does is it basically takes this number, divides it by 2, and then gives you the remainder. So if you remember learning long division in school, the remainder is whatever's left over after you divide something. And so if you have an even numbered letter, right? So 2, 4, 6, you divide it by 2, you're going to have no remainder. So that's going to equal 0. Okay, so if the text index %sign 2 and then equals 0, and when you're checking something in an After Effects expression, you need 2 equal signs. This is basically saying, is this an even numbered letter? Okay, so if it is, then I want you to use the selector value, right? And the selector value is, remember, the amount of selection that gets assigned to each letter. So if it's 100% selected, it will be affected by this. If it's negative 100% selected, it's going to be negatively affected by whatever my position's set to. Okay, so, I'm going to copy and paste this and put this on the site. So you can just copy and paste this. You don't have to type this in. But if you want to learn expressions, you need to type it in because that's how your brain's going to remember this. And make sure you get the syntax right. If this equals 0, open bracket. The next line is what will happen if this is true. Then on the next line, I close the bracket. And now I'm going to add another little piece to this. I'm going to say else and open another bracket. What this lets you do is it lets you check if this is true. If it is, this happens. If not, something else happens. Negative selector value. Okay, there you go. So now we've got this expression on there. And watch what happens when I animate the position now. Boom. The odd numbered ones, right? They move in the opposite direction because they have a negative selector value, but the even ones have a positive selector value. Okay? So there you go. Now you've got that set up. And so let's rename this. Let's just call this initial value again, right? And duplicate it and call this position 01. And now set this to negative 100. Remember, this is a relative value. So the initial value is 100. To move it back to 0, we need to make it negative 100. Let's go to the range selector. Advanced. Let's do a nice ramp down. Ease high. Let's set that to 100%. And then we'll animate the offset. So it starts here, right? Go forward 1 second. There you go. Right? And here's this animation. And you can see that there's no easing out of the position. It just shoots in, right? And let's make this a little bit more amplified here. Let's have it start at 300 and then set this to negative 300. Cool. All right, and so now you could do the exact same thing we did with the slide where you add an opacity animation too, so that the letters are not visible when they're up here and down here, but as they start moving, they get visible, right? So initial value, just add the opacity property to it, set it to 0. And now this is going to be interesting, okay? So because this initial value has this expression selector on it, the odd numbered letters are not going to be set to 0 because it's basically saying negative 100% of 0. It's basically not gonna work. So what we're gonna have to do is set an initial opacity. We're gonna have to make this a separate text animator. So we'll just say animate opacity, and we'll move this up here, and we'll call this initial opacity. We'll set the opacity to 0, and then we can just duplicate this and call this opacity change. And now on the opacity, on the position, we need that expression selector, but on the opacity, we don't. We can just delete that expression selector. And let's make sure that we get rid of this position. And on opacity change, we'll add the opacity property. We'll set it to 100%, and then in the range selector, it's already got keyframes on it, and so there you go. Right, so now we're stacking, and we're getting, a more elaborate kind of animation. And again, I want to just point out that why this is useful and really powerful is because now you can type in anything you want and get that crazy motion, and you can just stretch out your keyframes to make it take longer if it's a longer piece of type. There you go. And all of these, by the way, work with motion blur. So if you have, some neat kind of overlapping animation, you can use motion blur and get a nice little result there. And there you go. So what I hope the takeaway, okay, there's always a takeaway with my videos. What I hope that you take away from this is that, text animators, if you break each little bit of animation down, this is the first position, the initial position. Then you got the second position, then the third position, then the fourth position. And all of those positions just have offset keyframes. You can build some really complex moves. I mean, you could have these things have 20 different things happen and, and really make it intricate. And then all you have to do is copy the layer and type in something else, and it's done. So these are extremely powerful. They do take some getting used to, and I'm still sort of figuring them out. I mean, you sort of saw me stumble through it a little bit. But super useful when you're doing long form pieces that have a ton of type and you just want to get, you want to make something that looks nice, that looks custom, but you don't want to have to do 10 minutes of work every single time there's a new piece of type. So I hope you guys dug this. I hope you find it useful. Thank you guys so much. I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new today about text animators, which are one of those things that a lot of pros don't use that often because the stereotype is that they look very canned and they look cheesy, but they don't have to. If you build your own from scratch and you use animation principles and you really take the time to make them look good, they can be very, very useful time savers for you. If you have any questions or thoughts about this lesson, definitely let us know. And if you learned something valuable from this video, please share it around. It really helps us spread the word about School of Motion, and we will owe you a beer. Also, don't forget to sign up for a free student account to access project files from the lesson you just watched. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.